Welcome to another episode of Power Bourbon. This is TJ and Brian's favorite type of episode where Chuck sends the samples. So last year, TJ, if you do remember, we did a Stagg killer, a BTAC killer lineup of if you can find, the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, if you could find George T. Stagg. Of course, nobody could in 2021, came back in 2022. But if you could not find it, what were some alternatives? You actually chose in that lineup, Rare Breed over the George T. Stagg. Brian and I thought you were absolutely bonkers, but we did say that was a close second. So we thought I will say I will link that video above. Just saying. Oh, appreciate you filling in for Brian in his absence. Yep. So in 2021, I was able, in the absence of Stagg, I was able to get my hands on a Thomas Handy. As you can see, I've enjoyed some of it. Sent out some samples. And this is the rye from the BTAC collection. So comes in about 6.5 years. The proof point is 129.5. So stout, robust. And I blinded it along with some other ryes, and I ended up putting it with 4 other ryes. Okay. And this flight of 5 is blind to you and to me. So somewhere in here is a Thomas Handy. And then I'll also introduce, as we go through these, I'll in no particular order, I'll introduce the other 4 bottles that are in here.
Sounds good. And then, of course, to make people jealous, you did send us to some Patreon members, did you not?
We did. And I was, it's been so long ago, I was trying to remember who. I think
I would say, I think you sent this like back in September, and here we are in March recording this. So the Patreon members that have not drank your samples, congratulations.
We got distracted by Shiny Things / Best of Whiskey and Best of Bourbon, and then there was
lives. So weddings are getting planned. I have a toddler that is a toddler. That enough said. So things happen. All right, so we're gonna blind these off and see what we think.
So the first one, the nose is quite nice.
Yeah, very weak though. There's not a lot there. No, I have had
just a little bit of a citrus character. Mm-hmm. A little bit of floral.
Yeah, but no true rye characteristics. There's no hay, no dill or anything like that.
Yeah, and the palate, you get a little bit of that rye, but it's like there's a rich dark fruit back there that kind of underlies the rye floral note along with some oak.
The transition from the palate to the finish is where some of the hay grass notes come in, but it's so light. It's like when, I don't know, the grass starts to bloom and you're like, son of a gun, I'm gonna have to go mow my yard for the first time this year. It's that. It's not in your face or anything like that.
Yeah, and it's a little sweet too. Like you get a toasted, especially in the palate, I get a toasted brown sugar note before it kind of transitions into more of that rye spice, rye character.
Maybe even a little butter.
Yeah. So I'm going to introduce one of the bottles. It's empty. I finished it.
Oh, gosh.
And this is Pikesville rye. So this is one that we've been high on. This is out of Heaven Hill. So this is their barrel strength or their higher proof, 110 proof. This was in our Best of Whiskey 2021. Other people have been big proponents of this. Fred Minnick. Yeah. This is one of my favorite Kentucky ryes. So a little bit lower on the rye mash bill. I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't remember. But this is at least aged 6 years. So we're in the similar age range to the Handy, and similar proof point.
Yeah. All right. So for the second one, I do get a little bit of that hay grassy notes on the nose.
Yeah, quick, like think I give the nod to number one so far.
Oh yeah. And maybe a little of that like burnt butter. So when you've got butter on the griddle and it gives you that, it's been on there just a little bit too long. That's what I'm getting.
On the nose, I almost get a little bit of that bubblegum character. Some people pick up that note.
Oh, on the finish, it lets you know it's a rye. Holy cow.
Very drying.
Yeah.
Just the palate is, it's like I'm going to be looking for a watering hole.
Yeah. Once again, on the beginning of the palate, though, it's super sweet. And then on the finish, it just transitioned to like a savanna with grass in your mouth. Just dries you out like crazy, which is weird because usually when it dries you out, I get a lot of oak, and I don't like the oak is overpowered by the grass and the hay, which is interesting. But I'm assuming it's the oak tannic notes that's drying my palate out. But definitely that the rye notes take front and center.
Yeah, but you don't. Yeah, as I say, I'm sure it's the tannins that are drying that out too. But you don't get the taste. It's not like I'm tasting the heavy oak.
Mm-hmm.
I think I give the nod to number one just because of that. It's a bit over drying to me. Let me go ahead and introduce another one as we're getting into number three. It can't be a rye blind without including rare breed rye. I submitted this as one of my best of whiskey submissions last year, 2022, and it hung in quite well.
Yeah.
If you can get lucky at your local Costco, sometimes they sell these for like $45, which has to be probably the best value, the best rye on the market for that price.
Especially if you don't like traditional in your face grass hay notes.
If you don't like MGP 95.5 ryes, which you'll notice a theme tonight. Well, we're going up against a Kentucky rye. So the Handy is a Kentucky rye. And so most of these submissions are Kentucky rye. So that you will not find an MGP 95.5 rye in this lineup this evening.
Or a Canadian rye. And I will argue that
they just call everything ryes.
Yeah, Kentucky rye is the best type of rye.
I personally think so. And that was one of the pleasant, TJ linked the video above, which you probably won't. Chuck's Rye Challenge. One of the enjoyable pieces that I discovered that it was, I was used to these 95.5 MGP ryes that just, dill pickle, herbal, spearmint in your face. And I said I didn't like ryes. Well, I don't like those ryes, or don't like those ryes as much. Kentucky ryes have a little bit lower rye mash bill, a little bit sweeter corn. Really balances that out well, and I find myself enjoying Kentucky ryes quite a bit.
I will say, number three's nose is going to take it so far.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah, it is sweet. Little hints of rye, hay notes in there, wet grass,
citrus. I get getting a lot of lemon there. So it's like a sweet lemon tart with the you could think of that hay note, a little bit of a crust. Maybe a lemon tea. Those herbal characters.
Oh man, and then the lemon comes through all the way through from palate to finish, and there's no like crazy rye, hay, grass notes. It's just kind of like melded in there, just like ever so often like comes to the forefront to let you know, hey, this is a rye, not a bourbon. But lots of floral notes on this one.
Lots of floral, yeah. So it's like a little bit of menthol maybe in the palate, almost like a candied lemon. It's like a concentrated with that lemon herbal. Yeah, and some.
It reminds me of the you've got the gas station fruit candies that come in the circle. So you got the apple, you got peach. If they did a lemon version of it, that's what this is.
Yeah, but it's got that herbal character. It's I don't know if it's a lavender or
Yeah, I think I'd go lavender. Yeah.
that carries through in that palate. So it's not just citrus and sweet.
Mm-hmm.
That one's quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So deviating from Kentucky to their northerly neighbor, I ended up putting in Hard
Oh,
Truth, and this is the sweet mash bill number one. They've had several iterations since then.
I think they're up to 4.
Um, but we were big fans when this came out. I think this was 2021.
Yes.
You put it came out just in time for you to submit it to the best of whiskey, which it came in
Yeah.
second, if I do recall.
Yeah.
It shocked us all, actually, particularly for the age. And we know ryes can be better sooner than bourbons. Bourbons need to sit in those barrels a little bit longer. But this was a pleasant surprise. And when I was doing, I was blinding off for this flight preparation, blinding off my other ryes, this one hung. So I had to include it. So it's a little bit different. Again, it's an Indiana rye, Hard Truth Distillery out of I
Nashville,
remember the
Indiana.
name. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Nashville, Indiana. Great place. Should go visit it if you haven't.
Yep.
It's
Still has the coolest cork in the game because it's legit cork.
yeah.
It's like, that's pretty cool. And they've started releasing some new stuff, some single barrels. They got a chocolate malt rye and some other things. We're probably gonna have to go do a visit coming up here. I'm just gonna say.
For sure. Number 4.
Yep.
A little bit lighter on the nose. To me, this is almost like it disguises the rye very well. It's the nose. It almost noses more like a bourbon to me.
I wouldn't say it's a traditional bourbon. I would say it would be like a finished bourbon because so it has the bourbon notes all the way through until the finish where I get a little bit of that menthol hay note. But prior to that, it's all caramel, vanilla, all just traditional bourbon notes. It's very good, but I would say it's higher proof.
Yeah, that proof and it lets you know it early on. Definitely get some of that menthol as the finish, as some of that proof kind of dissipates, and as the very end of that finish, it's like a cooling sensation you get with that little bit of menthol note. That's I'm putting that towards that. Of course, we're gonna have to revisit a couple of these here, but that's towards the top for me. Let me introduce the last one. So thus far, the BTAC comes, if you can find it, of course, retail, 110, 120, something like that. Of course, then all the way up to who knows what.
Yeah.
Pikesville, less than $60. We talked about rare breed. Usually it's probably $60, but you can find it for less than 50. The Hard Truth comes in a little bit more, craft distillery. I think they're about around 65, 70. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I had to put something in there a little bit higher price to see if it could hang with the handy, particularly on the secondary market. So this is something that's available, but more expensive. And so this is the Kentucky Owl rye. So this is actually aged 10 years. So this is the oldest rye in the lineup. 114 proof. This is batch 3. So if you I bought this for 200 right before I started to see the other, but now you can't. They're listed at 300. So I thought it was a deal. Actually, I did it for this lineup specifically. So it's for the channel.
Yeah.
So you're welcome. So we have a wide spectrum of prices to go here against the Thomas Handy. So we've got some budget options, some Kentucky ryes that we're big fans of in the Pikesville, and the rare breed, of course, an Indiana rye that we've loved. And then, a little bit higher price, premium rye that's more available than the BTEC. So
it's probably more available because it's higher price and people are a little scared to pay that much.
It's the whistle pig of ryes. Oh, wait, whistle pig is rye. It's the
Yeah.
whistle pig of American ryes.
Yeah.
It's
Whistle
the
Pig just did a single malt for
Kentucky ryes.
ungodly. I think you have to give them your firstborn child, actually. So this last one's a much more delicate nose.
Yeah, that nose is it's just really light. You get a little bit of a sweet herbal, a little bit of menthol.
So the palate, I would say, is the best palate of the night, but then it drops off on the finish. There's just like it doesn't work all the way through from the what the palate was going for, which was this sweet vanilla, little hints of hay. And then when it goes to the finish, like the hay and grass just punch and take over. And I'm just like, where did that come from?
I think it's well balanced, and this would be a bourbon or a rye that I would steer somebody to as maybe an intro to rye. I think it's very good by itself. But when you put it up against these other four, I think this to me is near the end, near the backside.
Yeah, no, I agree.
How do you think I did?
There's not a bad one. So you can't get the handy, you don't want to spend the crazy amount of money on the Kentucky Owl because you'd like to, I don't know, sleep in your king size bed tonight and not on the couch. You still got the Pikesville, the Rare Breed, and the Hard Truth, depending on your budget and everything like that. So what is your favorite?
I was going 4 as my favorite.
Really?
3 is my second, and then 1 as my third. But those 3, like I had to, and this could be like depending on the night, how you were feeling. This might change.
I gotta go 3-1-4. So where I'm at. 4's just got too much of a punch on the finish for me.
I think so. What I don't like about 1 is that it seems to lack something in the palate. So the nose might be one of the best, or is one of the best. To me, it gets a little watery through that palate and finish, and that's where I give the nod to 3 and 4. So anyway, I think consensus, even though we don't agree with our top, I think we'll declare number 3 the winner.
Okay.
And then that leaves, I think second place will split between 1 and 4. Yeah. So here's all
right.
Thank you to my lovely fiance Hannah for pouring this flight and giving me this cheat sheet. Any guesses, TJ, as to what number 3 is? I just like, we just went through our celebrity bracket where we were speaking for weeks
and
like we were idiots. And I'm not going to guess, so I'm going to make TJ. Actually, I think if I'm going to only guess 1, I think number 4 is the handy. But
I'm going to go 3 is the Hard Truth. But it's really probably number 1 is the Hard Truth. Which make 3 the Rare Breed.
I mean, I do enjoy some Rare Breed.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So here we go.
We'll see. All right.
You want 1 through 5, or you want to do last place to
Yeah, let's do last place. What's our terribles, which was 1 and 4, right?
2 and 5.
2 and 5, right.
So 2 is Hard Truth.
Oh.
I mean, that's quite good, but
compared to the others.
I mean, age-wise, we're talking, a third of the age of most of these.
Yeah.
That's still a really good rye at 2.5 years. Still recommend.
Yeah.
Number 5. This one hurts a little bit because this is a favorite, and I expected it to do better. This is the Rare Breed.
Oh, wow.
So this is the one that we liked it. It just it lacked. It was just consistent like this, but for $45, like You'd go to this.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one that I would introduce ryes to people.
Yeah. Yeah. There's still something on that finish that I'm just like, not quite there. Dang, that means the Handy Kentucky Owl are still in it. Oh boy.
So the two
We're
high
gonna get
price bourbons are still in it. So is this a BTAC buster if we
I
don't
don't
bust the BTAC?
we're gonna get canceled by our people. It's gonna be rough. We're sorry. We did a blind. It is what it is. All right.
Okay. Well, we were both right at what number 4 was. I think because of the proof point, we were leaning towards that being the handy, and
Yeah.
number 4 is the handy.
Okay.
And so we both picked up on that. Good job, TJ. Sometimes you do get the proof point correct. Mark this down in history. This was my favorite.
Yeah.
I thought it was very robust. I liked the transition from the palate to the finish. The nose was good. But it was a close. Like I was battling with number 3. So what would you like to reveal?
I would say for me, there was something in the transition from the palate to the finish. If it was just the nose and the palate all day long, but in the finish, like it was just like, hey, I'm a rye and I'm gonna like
hey, there's hey.
Punch you in the face as hard as I can with that fact. So yeah. All right. So
and then so we our consensus number 1 was number 3.
Yes.
Or yeah, through the choice voting. So that means it's either Pikesville
or Kentucky Owl.
Or Kentucky Owl.
Oh man. I really hope for the good of the channel is Pikesville so people can afford what we say. But this is what happens when you do stuff blind.
This is what happens when you do stuff blind. Number 3, our consensus number 1 is Kentucky Owl, which makes number 1 Pikesville, which was TJ's number 2 and my number 3. And certainly that was in the upper echelon. So I think our takeaway is, yes, a 10-year rye at $200 to $300 in a blind did better. So if you have the money, okay, go ahead and buy the Kentucky Owl, which you probably did anyway, and you're probably not watching this channel. But otherwise, like if you're looking for something less than $100,
Pikesville.
This is really good.
Yeah.
And you should buy it.
Yeah. I agree.
I think that's my conclusion from this flight. So yes, we didn't beat Handy or the Owl, the high priced ryes, but dang, it was really close. And with 2 every day, I know Rare Breed isn't, you can't find it everywhere, but what whiskey or bourbon can you find everywhere? I don't know. So, but either the Pikesville or the Rare Breed, can't go wrong.
Yeah, I think the moral of the story, which is what we've said over and over again, no matter how expensive, how rare the bourbon is, we can find something that comes close and is readily available. So expand your palate, expand your collection, and get some of those everyday shelf items and give it a chance. And with that, we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Stay neat.